My name is Camilla. I'm a marine biology PhD, and I'm just going to chat to you for a little bit about what both of those things entail. So, first of all, what's a PhD? A PhD is a period of funding, full-time pay for normally 3.5 to 4 years, in which you are tasked with doing some novel research into a field under a question, a research project. Typically, there's an expectation or a requirement that as you go along, you'll be publishing your research in academic journals. So a PhD is often seen as a prelude to an academic career in research. However, not an awful lot of people who do PhDs stay in research, so it shouldn't be seen as something you only do if you want to be a university lecturer. Instead, a PhD is an amazing opportunity to develop skills and learn more about yourself and what you want to do. I personally haven't stayed in academia, but I hugely valued my PhD because it was 4 years in which I was able to run independent experiments, figure out questions of interest to myself, and then develop answers of how to approach them. As such, it's this wonderful development opportunity, and both in terms of actually gaining skills, but figuring out whether you like those skills in the first place. And from having done a PhD, I have a far greater appreciation for where my talents lie and evidence that I've gained those skills and worked with them and developed them myself. The structure of a PhD is normally that in your first year you are honing this research project or this question that you've arrived and tasked with answering. You tend to split it into 3 or 4 sub-questions which form individual projects or chapters, which you then answer and work to contribute to this bigger question. So that first year can be, how do I approach this? You do research, you get in contact with other professionals about what's already been done, how can I approach this in a novel or different way? Then over the next few years, you'll be working on those bits of research. Sometimes they're experiments, sometimes they might be purely computer-based modelling or data work. You might be given an existing data set and asked to treat it in a different way. For example, your project might not be something that you can collect in the field or run an experiment. I had friends whose PhDs are in satellite data and changing satellite data to model the ice caps. That's not something she could go out and collect herself, but she has demonstrated different ways to process and handle that data. Then, when you've come to your conclusions and you've written up your chapters, so it's an amazing way to show that you have written skills, you then have to present your work. At the end of your PhD, this takes the form of a verbal exam, where you have to defend your work to a panel. I think you can hear my cat. But additionally, you will be given opportunities to present this work in presentation form. I travelled internationally during my PhD. I presented my work at an international conference in Canada and at a workshop in Vienna, both of which are funded by the university, so it is an interesting opportunity to travel, meet new people. I think the most challenging aspect of that is that sense of the unknown. It's work that's never been done before, so it's, where is the precedent? You have to come up with the novel components of the research yourself. Then again, just as that is scary, it's also hugely amazing. You've contributed something new, and it's very hard for someone to say that you've done something wrong when you're the first person to do it. I think that leads naturally onto what I did. My PhD was in marine biology. Marine biologists like to cultivate an image that we're all dolphin trainers and turtle rescuers and dolphin wranglers, but sadly not. My PhD was in mud. I was what you call a benthic ecologist, the benthos being the bottom of the ocean and the seabed. We often say that the world is 70% ocean. What's underneath the ocean? The world is actually 70% mud. So I was looking at animals that live in the seabed, worms, bivalve mollusks, brittle stars, which are related to starfish, and I was seeing if their behaviour differs under different environmental conditions. We know that it does. An animal might act differently if the environment is hotter, but my work was looking at whether those differences are significant enough to change the kind of role that an animal plays in its environment. A worm isn't just a worm. A worm, by doing wormy things, is turning over the soil. It's changing one chemical into another chemical when it eats and then deposits it. If its behaviour changes, do those kind of roles that an animal plays in the ecosystem change? And consequently, do we need to factor those differences in when we're thinking about how we conserve or manage ecosystems in the future if the environment changes? So I loved my PhD. I chose to do one because I enjoyed my degree and I didn't feel done. As I said, am also not continuing it onwards. That doesn't mean it wasn't the right choice at the time, because it absolutely was. It's taught me hugely valuable skills. It gave me a greater opportunity to develop those and enter the workforce at a different stage of my development than I would have done if I'd come out straight from university. It's been great fun, and I really look forward to all the times I'm going to get to say, I'm a doctor, but not the useful kind.